All right. So we're live. We're in the AMN studio. Welcome, everyone. Invite your friends from across the globe. I am here with Femi Ogunbanwo. Femi, why don't you go by pastor or something
Hey,
like a
you know what? You want to give me a title? Go ahead.
the pastor professor? you know, Femi Ogunbanwo is with me in the studio today, and we're going to welcome him properly in a few minutes. But we need to give people time to join. We're getting people joining from different parts, so let people join in and feel free to hello. Feel free to I think you're sideways now, Femi. You
Oh, don't mind him. Don't mind him at all. Please carry on. Here we go. I'm back. I'm back.
All right. So it's so good to have you in the studio. Look, we've known each other now for for a few decades, I think,
At
about three, right?
least three. Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
but
Some 35
man, we're
years.
not
35
old
years.
people, are we?
No. No.
Very young at heart. And so, well, thank you for sharing space with me today. Let's give you a proper introduction.
Okay.
Hold on. Well, your video is not trying to come up, man. What's up with this?
Technology. Technology.
Are you singing? Technology is always something. Imagine this. I can't pull up your file. All right. So we had such a wonderful intro video for you, and it's not coming up. I'm going to be patient and try to get it.
No worries.
Okay, we're going to share screen. All right. Okay. I can't. It's not working, Femi. Sorry about it. So I'll just give you my own introduction. And until somebody in the back end, please help me get that video together while we're talking, so we can play it at some point. So Bim, somebody please get the video so we can talk to him. So why don't you tell us about yourself? Tell us what you do. Tell us, where you're based. Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, my name is on the screen there, Femi Ogunbanwo, Olufemi Olusheyi Ayodele Adebola Ogunbanwo. And so I'm currently based in North Wales in the UK. That is in the sort of southerly part of the UK in Wales, but the north of Wales. I'm a missionary pastor here in North Wales since 2007, when the Lord sent us here from Essex in the UK to come and start a work here, which we have been doing, and hopefully, faithfully, what time will tell, or the Lord will tell. So that's what we do here. But apart from that, I used to work corporate in Essex before, managing companies and a mediation company in particular. When we quit there, I trained to be a mediator myself. It was in 2003. And so now I am a certified, well, I have been for over 15 years, certified mediator, family that's divorce and separation mediator. I'm also a community mediation, that dispute resolution, alternative to the court system. Okay. And I also do parenting coaching for parents who have separated and divorced, gone to court, and the court tells them to go and take a course on parenting. So I do some of that. I just did some today, actually. Coaching on how to parent in time of conflict.
Hmm.
So I do that, and I do marriage coaching as well as part of my pastoral duties, but also aside from it in private practice. So I am very passionate about. I mean, people ask me what are your things, and I say community, marriage, and parenting. Those three things, they are really close to my heart and have always been. So year on year, always looking to develop myself in that area. So that's me in a nutshell. Well, let me say, I've been married 33 years to the most wonderful lady in the world, the greatest chef this side of heaven.
Yes,
And
Margaret.
we have two beautiful children, Ilerioluwa,
Oh,
27, and
yes.
Elitoda, 22, and they are wonderful kids.
Oh, welcome to the show. Well, thank you so much for sharing space with us. And you said that so you are a missionary pastor.
Yes,
So why? Okay, what's the difference? It's like so you're pastoring on a mission.
that's right.
Okay.
Pastoring on a mission because because I have to. In that we're here as missionaries primarily, but once people start coming to the Lord and getting saved, getting baptized, and all that, they do need a shepherd as well. And until the Lord sends one who is specifically a shepherd like that, we are also doing the pastoring. I am also doing the pastoring. It's not my primary call, I don't think, in the church. I don't think anyway, but I apply myself to it. Like Paul said to Timothy, do the work of an evangelist. So I'm a missionary pastor. We are here to mingle with the community, to take our place here. Ostensibly, we're in a different nation, different country, different language, different culture, and we're just trying to be one of them, part of them, and at the same time showing Christ to them and seeing what God will do here and pastoring those who do come to the Lord.
Oh, absolutely. And I love what you do with you're a certified mediator. And so basically you are bringing healing to relationships. I always say that it's within the context of relationship that we get wounded. It's within the concept of the context of relationship we get wounded. But it's also within the context of relationship that we get healed. Nobody really is an island. We need each other in order to be whole. So the whole concept of community, when we're talking about community, that whole concept of community is exciting for me because it's there's no mental health without community health. If the community is sick, then the nation is sick. Okay, because we're the ones who build the nations. So when we're talking about community well-being, from my purview, the community well-being, we're talking about the wellness in terms of spiritual wellness of the community, social wellness of the community, environmental wellness of the community, cultural, all of the financial, economic, all of this are important in order for us to thrive. But you have written a book on community that I piques my interest. I actually wrote one of the forwards for that book, and I think that you're coming at it from a spiritual platform, right, or lens. So could you tell the audience, first of all, what is community wellness to you, and then tell us about why you wrote the book?
Okay. All right. So for me, excuse me, community wellness has to do with the, well, excuse the tautology, but the wellness of a community.
You cannot describe a word with a word.
and the individuals within that community. So first of all, very quickly, as you probably know, and many people will do, and the term community itself, it's ubiquitous these days. It's everywhere. Online community, online that community, this community. That you have and it's all based around different kinds of homogeneous interests or factors. It could be race, it could be culture, it could be sexuality, it could be this or that or the other, or it could be an ideology. Even, and we have all sorts of communities. Then we have the sort of more geographical communities as well, where you actually live. And people say, I live in that community over there, I live in that community over there. Okay, so, and then we also have the more sort of intentional and purposeful community where people come together for a purpose. They are aligned for a purpose. They come together for a purpose. And that is my key burden, and especially for the church. So it is a sort of religious, spiritual concept, which is, if you like, an ideology or a philosophy of some sort of how to live that I believe is informed by the scriptures and is designed by God himself. So let me read to you just one quick paragraph here that kind of describes how I think about this. It is at the in my chapter 8, and it's the beginning of chapter 8, the dream and issues. And so I say, I dream of communities of visionary members who all identify with a common and singular passion of demonstrating, quote, a city of light set on a hill, where our heartfelt desire is for his name and for the fame of him. And speaking the truth in love, we grow up in all aspects into Christ, being fitted and held together by what every person supplies, according to the efficient devotion of each individual, causing the growth of that body in love. Very long and convoluted sentence, I know. And it's being sort of hived from different, what do you call it? Different passages of scripture. So, and this for me tells about a healthy community, a community that is doing well, where each and every individual in that community has something to give to it and is also in a place to receive something from it. So, and in that sense, there is a flow of nurturing, there's a flow of nourishment, there's a flow of safety and protection and all those sort of things. And then that community is well. So that's the way I see wellness in community.
How is that different than from, it looks like you're describing the church. It looks like how is it different from church members? Because that's a community. It's what you're saying. Different from, I go to church, I have a church community, we're healthy, we're doing life. How is that? So tell us what your thesis, I don't want to use the word thesis, what you're proposing. What are you proposing?
Okay, so how is that different from a regular, usual, if I can use that term, church community? Correct. Like my friend said, what's his name now? Tom Bowden, who wrote the foreword for the book as well, he said, a bunch of eyes do not a we make. Okay? A bunch of eyes do not a we make. And a congregation does not make a community. I suspect that many churches run from a congregational model, okay? And that simply means that people come from far and wide. People get to choose which church they go to, which meeting they go to. And I've been in churches where people travel 2 hours to get there. And they've grown past about 50 different churches to get to ours, and that's not what I'm proposing at all. I am proposing a community that is intentional in the sense that people go to live on the same parcel of land or in the same region, a regional community. And then based on that, or through that, they're able to share in very close proximity all the things that life entails. So ranging from lend me a bowl of sugar, which I can just pop around to the next door. You remember that story Jesus told about the parable of the guy who went to his neighbor and banged on the door? Yeah. So from that sort of aspect, lend me a bowl of sugar, to indeed mental health, which is, somebody is really in depression or in darkness. I've heard of stories of people who've been on their own for so long and living literally in the dark because of all sorts of stuff going on with them. And then the next thing we hear, they're dead. And you think, how does that happen? They were a member of a church. They were a member of a church. Now, if we were all living next door to another believer intentionally, and somebody was knocking on your door almost daily, or at least regularly, seeing you, talking through the day, talking through the week, talking through the month, the issues of work, of relationships, and so on and so on, the needs, the practical needs as well. I think that will serve us a lot better. And that is the picture I see in scripture from Genesis to Revelation. So that's how it is different. That's how I see it differently too. Congregational meetings, they're good. Don't misunderstand. I run congregations here as well. But I'm teaching them about going on to the next level. That next level. Congregations are mainly face-to-face. Community has to be heart to heart in addition to face to face.
Okay, that's good. That's good. Um, I just came from. I just spoke at a church right before this,
Okay.
and I was talking about inclusion for people with for people with disability.
Okay.
Um, and one of the conversations centered around seeing one another, the ability to recognize each other within the
Hmm.
church. I asked
Yeah.
how many of you have made one new friend this, I mean, 6 new friends this year. Well, maybe I had
Hmm.
like 2 or 3 hands up, and then 5, and by the time I got to one, maybe I had 10 people who had touched base with somebody new in the church,
All
right?
right.
And so we attend churches and we literally do exactly what you said, the face to face. Sometimes we don't even do face to face. I don't know what it is that we do. We
We
would
do
face, yeah,
face to skull.
yeah, exactly. And then once the meeting is over, you carry your stuff and you go and you move on to your life.
Yeah.
Small steps. And okay, so here is what's happening. The picture I just painted is the reality of now. This is what we see
Yes.
in churches. I can be
Hmm.
in pain in the church. I can be suffering in the congregation and nobody picks it up, and
Hmm.
nobody knows. I was talking to a pastor's wife one day, and she told me that she had lost so much weight at church
Yes.
because she had been going through, she was just depressed and so many things were happening. She had lost so much weight, and everybody
Wow.
kept saying, Pastor, you look good, you look so good. Oh, you oh my gosh, and everything. Not one person came up and said, are you okay? What's
Are you
going
okay?
on?
Yes. Are you okay?
So we are not even seeing each other in this congregation, majority, because it is so uh, uh functional in the approach,
Right. Yes.
maybe the better term is transactional. I come in,
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
come into this and then I give my money and then I'm done. So
Yes.
that's on one end of the spectrum.
Of the
And now
spectrum.
this one that you're painting a
Yes.
picture of literally heaven on earth. You're painting a picture of how we're supposed to be,
Yes.
and this will
Yes.
impact everything, and something very dear to my heart, even in the way we select our spouses.
Hmm.
It's going to impact everything to how we influence nations. So that's this end. So do you see what I'm saying? So it looks to me there's
Yes.
a huge gap from this to this. How do we bridge that gap?
How do we bridge that gap? Well,
Yeah.
like you kind of suggested earlier on, baby steps. That's in practical terms. But first of all, we start bridging the gap by understanding or getting to grips with the fact that there is there is another life that is possible, that is actually painted in the scriptures. There is another life that is possible. In the same way that many of us have kind of come to grips with the same sort of idea with our health, for instance, physical health, our financial well-being. And churches teach this, and they should. They teach it, and all this stuff, healing and whatever else, righteousness and resistance of sin and all this stuff, sanctification. We have come to appreciate and embrace the fact that another life is possible in those arenas, right? So now, the next step then is to realize that there is another life possible in how we function as the body of Christ. Like the Apostle Paul uses the physical body as an example, almost a literal ass as an example of the body. So once we embrace, first of all, that philosophy or ideology and begin to investigate it, begin to make inquiries into it, investigate it, we begin to see areas in which we can adapt. Now, then on a very practical step there afterwards is what I suggest for many people. Because yes, you're right. There is a massive gap between going to service and what you described earlier on is why we call it a service. It's
Mhm.
almost like taking your car in for a service.
Yeah,
A guy comes in, you do
that
your
is
service and
true.
you go home. All right. But moving from the service orientated meetings to community type, one of the first ways to do it, I would say, like I suggested someone not too long ago actually, is okay, so you've just arrived in church and this is a new church to you. Before you purchase a house or get a mortgage or whatever, why don't you rent for 6 months, first of all? Get to know people a little bit in church and get to know where people live or some people live. And when you find out where some people live, then aim to live as close to them as possible. You see, too many times we move with work, we move with all sorts of reasons, but we don't move necessarily to go and live near people who are supposed to be other members of our body. We leave that for Sunday services, okay? So I would say, first of all, seek to move near somebody where 2 or 3 are gathered, 4 are gathered, 5 are gathered. And then before you know, if I bought a house in a region where I know there are 4 Christians already, and then somebody else did, and somebody else did. I mean, we have neighborhoods in our world that are predominantly populated by a certain sector of society, don't we?
Mhm.
Be it black, be it
Yeah.
Afro-Caribbean, be it this, that, the other Chinese. So why can't Christians do the same things? That would be the first step. So the first step is getting to grips with the philosophy or ideology. The second would be actually moving towards it in the little things that you can do. And then the next step really would be for any given church to add this message to their repertoire of messages in the same way that you preach on health, that you preach on faith, that you preach on righteousness and all this, preach on community as well, real community. And I'm aware there are a few churches doing it already that I'm aware of. Maybe there are tons, maybe there are hundreds, I don't know. I know a few. So churches start to preach it. That's the third thing. The fourth thing then is some brave people actually uproot
Brave.
themselves,
Okay.
brave people, and decide that, you know what, we're just going to go do this thing and make it work. And that's where I'm at right now. So I consider myself in the next couple of years to be in a setting where I'm actually living with Christians and believers, not necessarily in the same property, but certainly within close proximity. All right.
Okay. So now, of course, I'm going to ask the question.
Yeah. Which one?
Okay. Uh, when people hear this,
Mhm.
we're going to live together, and we're going to gather as a community. The red lights just starts flashing.
I know.
It is like we've heard too many stories of cults.
Jim Jones.
Yes, too many stories of people, abusing others within this cult. So what would be your response to someone like that, to people like that? Because there will be
To
many.
people like that.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a whole chapter dedicated to that.
Yes.
For those who care to grab the book, it's available hard paperback and on Kindle as well. So there's a whole chapter on that, chapter 8. That's where I call it the dream and issues. So I highlighted about 6 different issues, common issues that people speak about. And the
Let's go
one
through
you,
those. Let's go through
sorry,
them.
let's
Let's
go
go
through
through
them.
those.
Okay,
Yes.
I will run through them quickly. Broad lines. Okay, so the first one is, this the sort of spiritual response. The Lord is with us everywhere, so why do we all need to start living in a hovel, and gathering together? And while that is technically correct, as spiritual as it may sound, the responses lack practical investment for effective changes. So the Lord is with us everywhere. Yeah. So what do you do with the body then? If we are supposed to be a body and one arm lives over there and one nose lives over there, and we are part of the same local expression of the body, how does that really, really work in practical terms? The day that you need me, God forbid you need me at midnight, I won't be able to come to you, not 2 hours away. I won't come. But if you lived 2 doors away, I would come. Okay, there you name it. So practical stuff like light of the world response. People say we're the light of the world, we're the salt of the earth. We're supposed to be scattered around in order to affect our world and all that. And I agree to an extent, but to read the whole response to that, you have to read it to get the whole response. However, let me just say quickly, briefly considered, the biblical light of the world is or should be an illuminating and clarifying influence on and a visible and viable example of thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. So the light of the world is not just we're supposed to be roaming around the world as lights. There is a city set on a hill. The city does not roam around. The city is set on a hill, and people see it like a light source, like a lighthouse, like a beacon. So we set ourselves in a place and we shine from there. You can read more about it. And then there is this whole fear of loss. People are generally afraid of losing out, especially in financial or material terms. People think they're going to be the only ones pulling their weight and everybody else going to be dossing around, as we say around here. People will be, they will be pouncing, dossing, and whatever terms you Americans use over there. Okay? They'll basically be freeloading. Is that the correct one in America? They'll be freeloading. Okay? Wherever.
Freeloading.
People think it'll be freeloading. But no, it is not so, because the Bible tells us that the love of the brethren in community is a very personal, practical, and enduring love. James teaches that. Peter teaches that. Paul teaches that. Practical, enduring, and personal love. Okay? And except a seed fall to the ground and die, it cannot grow and bear fruit. So that whole fear of loss, the fear of death, is not from the Lord. We have to conquer it. Knee-jerk reaction, comparing other community ideas with the bad examples of failed and healthy communities. Okay, that's the one you actually put your finger on earlier on. This is both an accusation of the devil and our human tendency to exaggerate the few bad examples while minimizing the several good examples of very successful, healthy, thriving, stable, and enduring communities. Besides, listen now, just because many marriages and families fail does not make marriage and family bad or dangerous.
Absolutely.
And the same with any constituted group. Companies, nations, NGOs, any constituted group, just because they fail or they go bad does not make them intrinsically bad. So the idea that there was a Jim Jones or there was somebody in Texas and we're all going to go that route makes no sense to me. That's irrational. It's a phobia. Somebody needs to make an appointment with that person and get them sorted. Okay. And then finally, there is the fear of unresolvable conflict and schisms arising from differences in culture, religious and theological backgrounds, personalities, vision, ambitions, etc. Okay? No doubt, living in proximity would lead to some conflict, especially when we are trying to interact as well. But listen, that only provides us a more, a ready environment in which to mature and cultivate all the Christian virtues that we all claim to have. Patience, long-suffering, all those love, joy, all those virtues that we all claim to have, they've hardly ever been tested properly. People in marriage know what I'm talking about. When you live in marriage, that's the first community. You can't just pack your stuff and leave. You have to resolve the conflict. And that's what I'm talking about. So that's my response to people.
All right.
There's nothing that is unresolvable. As somebody once said, if it's predictable, it's probably preventable.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, thank you so much for that. Now, as you were speaking, though, Femi, I was thinking this could be from a top down, bottom up approach. Let me give you an example.
Sure.
In my family, we live close to each other in some way, we kind of move and around each other, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff.
It was never anything planned.
Okay.
It was not actually intentional,
Okay.
in terms of we're going to live close to each other.
Yes.
It grew out of our relationships.
Yes.
It grew up out of our relationships, and this also includes some of my close friends. So it grew out of our relationship, our love for one another. So we wanted to
Yes.
be together. So I'm
Hmm.
wondering if, to start this process, and I understand, you know, having an example of a community so they can look at it, which you're going to help us give an example. There's some examples out there, which I'm going to have you share some healthy
Yes.
communities out there. However, bear this, just so when you start with the meat of the matter in being Christians, and not just churchgoers, and not just going to service, doing the things and noticing each other and including each other and loving on each other, it would just
Yes.
become, you know, we want to be by each other. Now, the
That's right.
intentionality of that, I understand. I get that, you know, sometimes you have to teach what you want to see happen in your congregation. You have to teach it, right? But could you speak to the fact, or to the idea of becoming more practical in our Christianity? So, what I'm saying, and if the Bible is talking about love, let's actually live that out within the body, and then part of the overflow of that
Yes.
would be what you're talking about.
Yes. So I hear you. And I think, in fact, when you tie it up together like that, which I do too, it becomes partly a bit of an indictment as well, actually, to be honest with you, in terms of um, personal assessments. We need to be assessing ourselves and our groups, appraising ourselves by certain benchmarks, by certain ideas, saying, okay, so if we claim to be loving, like the Bible says, truly, what then is the reticence about living near one another? Or why hasn't that sort of driven us to live closer and closer? So you gave the example of your family and how by just relating, by the virtue of your relationship, by the force of that, you have been kind of driven almost, or drawn, if you like, driven or drawn, whichever
Yeah.
one you will use, together. You want to be around each other. And so it begs the question then, doesn't it, D, that when Christians do life, why don't more of them want to be together more
Mm.
and then begin to drive it even more? Why are the meetings only sufficient? And why do people begin to get nervous once you start proposing the idea that Christians should live near each other? It's almost like a fear. I've literally seen somebody's eyes bulge out in fear once, like, what? You can't do that. And I think, what's the problem? You live in an estate where you don't know anybody there, and you're quite happy to live next to a certain worshiper. You know, why wouldn't you do this with your fellow believers? So that sort of indictment, when we appraise ourselves properly, do I actually love you that much, or that I've known you for so long, and when it's time to move house, when we consider moving house, for whatever reasons we consider moving house, why wouldn't I gravitate towards you? So that question is there. And I think each person needs to answer it for themselves. Why wouldn't you gravitate towards that person? Okay.
Mm.
Now, I have lived in situations where we have gravitated towards other believers, and other believers have gravitated towards us when we were pastoring in Harlow in Essex, to the extent that we could pick up the phone, call a barbecue party, and within an hour, we could have 30 people in our garden. Okay, and someone could call me at midnight and say there's trouble here, and I could be there in under 15 minutes, walking, and they're all part of the local expression. So
Mm.
I think that's part of it, and I've lost a bit of the other thing you were asking now. I'm sorry, in my explanation there.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, because I don't remember what I asked you on that one.
And you don't
However,
remember either.
however, let's
Mhm.
just stick with that flow. When you as a Christian,
Yes,
this you decide, or when we as Christians
yes,
decide to gather together,
yes.
to we're not just talking about a physical place. Well, I just want us to clarify. I mean, you're talking about a physical place, but that's not all. I would like to see that in the gathering of us together, in the fellowshipping of us together, that we we relate to one another. What is that definition of koinonia? The intermingling of
Intimacy that is total.
intimacy that is total and complete, right?
Yeah.
When so that's what we're supposed to experience.
Hmm.
That is what attracts me to your book, because that's what I see. I see the your chapter of the hallmarks of Goshen again
Yeah.
is you're talking, you painted this picture of Goshen again, and of all of the true light and the spirit of and the dwelling of the presence of the spirit and the things that could happen. Now most people will say that the apostles were dispersed in the book of Acts. They were together and then they were dispersed all across the globe. They were dispersed, but obviously, even though they were dispersed, they still found each other and built community around each other, right? So for you, can you give us a picture of Goshen again? Like a picture of Goshen. Paint that picture for us. And maybe you would inspire some people with that today.
Okay. So the idea of Goshen again is obviously taken from the first Goshen, which is where um, Joseph settled his family when they came to him in Egypt. And it started with an initial family, and then it carried on and multiplied into what then became Israel. And we learned that they didn't actually, if there was some dispersal, it would have been very minimal, because at least twice God said about them, my people in Goshen, my
Mm,
people who live in Goshen. And on one of those occasions was during the what do you call it, the plagues. And he said the plagues will not touch his people who
right.
lived in Goshen. So if there was dispersal, it was minimal, but the bulk of them would have been minimal. I mean, the bulk of them would have still lived in Goshen, because that's how God identified them. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's where the idea of Goshen comes from, like people always coming together. Now, again, first of all, very quickly addressing the whole idea that the church, the initial church, dispersed, and then, they built around and then they dispersed again. That's true. But context is everything in that situation. The dispersal was for our mission, and not all of them dispersed. Otherwise, letters wouldn't have been written to specific churches in specific regions. The church in Ephesus, the church in Corinth, the church in Colossae. So there were specific identities of churches in those places. So some may have dispersed, but there were still core groups of people who were identified by where they lived, and they were all written to one letter. Okay, so the idea that I'm seeing here is that Goshen again will be a true light of the world by exemplifying what a truly good and godly community or integrated community looks like.
Exactly.
Okay? What an integrated neighborhood looks like. Goshen again will be a true light of the world by exemplifying what a truly good and godly community or integrated neighborhood looks like. Listen, Jesus gave us a commandment. He said, love each other as much as I have loved you. For when you demonstrate the same love I have for you by loving one another, everyone will know that you are my true followers. John chapter 13. Okay, that's from the Passion Translation. He said, love each other as much as I have loved you. Now we know that Jesus loved these guys. He was speaking to initially his first group of people, and they moved around together all the time. All the time. They may have had different homes, but they were almost inseparable. The question is, who am I inseparable from? Who are you inseparable from?
That's beautiful. Yeah.
And it has to be a group of people. Well, let's start from at least one best friend, another one, a group. Who are you separate? Goshen again will demonstrate this as we come together. Let me give one or two more ideas. Goshen again will enact the redemption from the Adamic curse and all of its ramifications, even as the Holy Spirit injects joy into the community because of their unity. So you read in Psalm 133, how good and how delightful it is for brethren to live together in unity. To live together in unity. I think so many people jump straight to the unity part of it and skip the living together part of it. For brethren to be, they tend to say brethren to be in unity. No, it's to live together in unity. This picture of delightful living together is of physical geographic connectedness, sharing the same space on an ongoing basis, more than simply being able to get along without actually sharing their life together. So in Goshen, we can best be our brothers' keepers, our sisters' keepers. We can best support our marriages. We can best introduce our children to one another for a potential perfect fit. Wink, wink. We can do stuff in true strength of collaboration because we are there together, and we can have mission and vision together in reach and outreach. And Goshen again can become exceedingly powerful. And as you said, there are some good examples of it, even in modern day times. Yeah,
absolutely. Before you share those examples, I want to show you what I get from your vision, what I get from this. When I hear this, it interests me. It's actually, no, it's not interested. It makes my heart happy. All right, because I see a picture of what should be. And so let me kind of see if I can paint the picture of what I see from your vision. Is a community that lives together. They're thriving together. They're thriving. They're doing well economically. They're doing well socially. I'm not thinking of a close community. I'm thinking of an open community in the sense that we are part of the other communities in the sense like, okay, so the Christian community here. If you want to learn up for we're finding cure for the common cold. We have scientists who are providing innovations. We have agricultural people who are doing, because if we say we have the mind of Christ, if creativity is flowing, we're going to then be able to shift and influence culture. So so is that close to what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I am seeing that in Goshen, people will enact, as I say, how can I put it? The eradication of this eradication of poverty, for instance, in the church, like in Acts 2, in Acts 4. People will come together, like you say, the Spirit of God is moving through them. There'll be creativity, and it will be an open community as well, so that people can flow in and they can flow out depending on where they're at and what's going on with them. It's not going to be bound. You're not going to be bound. there will still be autonomy as well. There should still be family autonomy, in the sense that each family, each person is ultimately responsible to God and to Christ for their salvation. Also, control, the issue of individual sort of charismatic leader control will not be a real issue, should not be a real issue. And yeah, absolutely, I agree with your description of what you're saying there, and a lot more of that is actually described in the chapters
in
here
the
as
chapter.
well. Yes.
We have a question or two on here which I want to
Yes.
ask you. But I wanted you to, before we go to the questions, I wanted you to finish up with, because we promised we're going to give examples of those healthy, thriving communities. Can you give us some examples, please?
Okay, I'll give you a couple of examples. One of them is in upstate New York, in what's it called now? Greenville, near Schuylerville, near Saratoga, upstate New York, and very good friends of mine. In fact, this time next week, I should be with them. I should be there, just chilling out for a few days and getting to. So this is a community of believers who haven't always been a community. They were challenged in pretty much the same way that I've been challenged over the years. And the pastors, and they started preaching about it. And then they made a move to buy land together and to apportion the land. And that whole region is now filled with Christians, that whole region. And they have a covenant on which the lands are sold, the houses. If anybody wants to move on, the community has first refusal and in buying it and then selling it on at market value to whoever else wants to come in, based on a certain covenant that has been put in place. Thriving, they do a lot of things together. Their main specialty is the arts. So, fine art, painting, mosaic stuff, and they do a lot of woodworking. They do a lot of building and construction. But then many individuals still do their own professional work that they trained for. So we have a dentist, we have doctors, we have journalists, we have musicians, we have all sorts of people, just part of this community. So, and they're still working outside the community. Okay, so we're not saying nobody must go outside and not do anything, but they grow and harvest their own timber. They have their own waterworks. About the only thing they don't do is the electricity. Everything else is pretty much done like that. And there is very, very, very good interaction. In fact, Tom says to me, he says, we don't do counseling much here, not because we don't believe in it, but because most problems are actually sorted out while people are interacting.
Absolutely.
Most problems are sorted out while they're interacting, And so that's one good community there. They are called New Covenant Community. I've written quite a bit on it in the book itself. New Covenant Community, New York. Excellent work that they do there, and they are absolutely beautiful. Does everybody stay? No. Some people come, find it's not their cup of tea, and then move on. But they managed to retain a core group of over 200 people so far, and it's thriving and it's doing well noted in the community, in the regional community, and they're doing great work. Rescued some historical buildings from the town center that were going to be knocked down by the council or whatever you guys call them, and they rescued those buildings, took them off, restructured them, and they're now the sort of flagship buildings in that town center, in that city. So they're doing fantastic job. The other community is the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood. Now that's taken from a German word that means brotherhood. Okay, like it suggests, the Brotherhood. Now they've been going since like 1929, started by Eberhard Arnold, a guy called Eberhard Arnold, who I've read in and out. I've read Eberhard. I mean, he's really, really influenced my thinking, not just about community, but about so many things. Yeah, we won't go into that. But these are incredible guys, and they're still running today, and very, very beautiful. They run successful multi-million-dollar businesses internationally. They have communities in the UK, in America, in Australia, and where else? In Germany, and in Europe, other parts of Europe as well. So they have pods like that all over, but they're still under one covering. The leadership style and all this stuff and reaching out there, I can't go into too much detail, but they do fantastic work in terms of reaching out to the outside world, not just with the gospel, the raw gospel, but in mission. So medical missions, dental missions, and I don't know, somebody might have heard of the term, the brand Rifton, Rifton, Rifton. They make children's, they make equipment for disabled children and for nursery schools.
Wow.
This was how I actually discovered this community in the first place, through that when I worked in the NHS. So Rifton is a multi-million-dollar industry that is also non-profit, if you like, but highly specialized and incredibly respected all over the world by people that look after those with disabilities. So you see that reaching out and being a light to the world can also be through community. And these guys, beautiful stuff.
Okay. You know, when you say, thank you for this, for the description, because it paints a picture, and it paints a picture of a dynamic community. And it paints a picture of a thriving community, and not of all of those that we hear about, all of the one that said go and sell everything that you own and bring the money to the man leading it, or you know, they tell you what kind of clothes you're going to wear, you know, all of those kind of things like that is so it's so trivial too. But when you're talking about power structure, when you're talking about nation building, how can we build nations if we are not even together? So we only have a few more minutes. So I don't want you to take one or two questions.
Okay, I'll try.
So one of the, where is it? I hope I didn't lose this question. All right. So which comes first, the living together or the caring for one another? This in the light of 1 Thessalonians 2:8.
Okay, that's very simple. The caring for one another comes first, at least in terms of revelation, in terms of understanding and embrace. You have to first embrace the revelation, embrace the thought, the word, the truth. Yes, you have to first embrace the truth that we ought to care for one another, and it is in that caring we're drawn together. Okay, in that caring, we're drawn together. And it gets to a level that we become indispensable to each other and inseparable. And we want to actually be together. Okay, so the initial core of any community is going to be people who actually want to be with one another. So we're not going to go recruiting and say, come, sign over here. And then like a magnetic field, begin to attract more and more people. So yes, looking after each other comes first, and it's always there.
We just finished a series at my church called The One Another's, and it's a series that looked at all the one another's in the scripture, like love one another, be devoted to one another, honor one another. You know, when in this and the whole intention is to get away from this superficialness in congregating, to go beneath, go a little bit deeper, so that you can feel my pain, you can feel my joys. So that we all live our lives so we can bear. We all live lives that we want to be witnessed. We want witnessed. You know. If I'm living my life and there's nobody to witness that life, emotionally, I'm not okay. No. Psychologically, I won't be okay, because we want to be witnessed. And absolutely. I think that one of the good things about this community, this intentional community building that you're talking about, is the fact that we can know each other and see each other and be who we're supposed to be. By this shall men know that you are my disciples, by your love one for another. And love is not just a word. Love, word. I mean, love is not just a noun, it's a verb. It's action. we have to see it. And I think
Yes.
that's what you're saying. And the other question, 1 month before we leave, is this one. If we are growing a community of, okay, well, that's actually not a question, but it says if you're growing a community of, in the community, creativity flows. Okay, that's not a question. That was just a statement. Of, I think somebody just, wrote what we said.
Yes.
Right.
They're listening. They're listening to
They're
us.
listening. They're listening. I would like for you to end it with this. Okay, for those, we've learned today that churches need to talk about this. We've
Yes.
learned today that there should be a paradigm shift, that community living is part of the package. It's in
Yes.
scripture. It is scriptural. But
Mhm.
and I think that the third thing that we talked about is, okay, well, this is my thing. We talked about it,
Go
but
on.
this is my purview. Is that for us to get to this end of the spectrum, that gap needs to be filled, right?
Yes,
What are
ma'am.
some practical ways? Just end with that. Practical ways in church, apart from talking about it. Okay, what can people do to shift from a service model to a relating model? What can somebody do in their church today and make a difference?
Okay. So some of the things we can do in churches today to make a difference, we first of all make a friend.
Very good.
Make a friend, especially of somebody that may be an outlier. Make a friend. Make a friend. And how do you make a friend? You really have to come alongside. You have to be available. We have to invite them for a cup of tea, for a coffee, not just at Costa's, not just at wherever else you go, Starbucks. Take them home,
Mm.
or be invited to theirs. I'm very big on inviting myself around people's homes, and and inviting them to my home as well. I mean, just
Yes.
last week,
Yeah.
2 weeks ago, there was a knock on my door. I opened it. It was one of our church members said, "You've been going on about this thing for so long. We decided to visit you." I was still in my scrubs. I said, "Come in." I was so psyched. I was really so psyched. I thought, "Oh my God, it's working. It's working." So invite somebody home or invite yourself over. Share a meal. Share a meal, not just a cup of tea. Okay, you can start with a cup, but share a meal as well. No matter how simple that meal is, because over a meal, you can have a longer discussion.
Mm.
And then listen to this now. This is interesting. I've always believed in having seeds of vulnerability. So when I'm relating with somebody at that level, I might just share something about me that they really don't need to know, but makes me vulnerable to them. I offer them my vulnerability. I choose carefully, mind you, carefully, but I offer them my vulnerability in the hope that they will reciprocate. I have made many a friend that way, many a friend that way. And some of them are inseparable to me today, with me today. Okay? So share a cup of drink, invite them home, share a meal together, offer some vulnerability, and where you get the chance to move to where Christians live already. But that means you have to discover where they live and move to them where they live. And then that's the
Wow.
beginnings of it. Okay?
Those are great tips. Thank you so much. I love the one that you're talking about. Actually share a meal. Actually
Yes.
share a meal. And we know that, where a lot of the COVID lockdowns are being lifted in areas.
Yes.
And so we're now gathering again. I think that you've given us some very practical suggestions on how to bridge the gap. Thank you
Yes, ma'am.
so much for being my guest today. I so
Thank you
thoroughly
very much
enjoyed
for having
this.
me.
So feel free to come back anytime if you want to talk about any part of your book. Please come back so we can have a deeper conversation about any particular topic within the community.
I might take you up on that.
Yeah.
And thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege to be on this program today. I loved it.
Well, I'm glad you did. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And this time next month, we'll bring another guest in to share our a conversation with me. Have a good rest of your day. All right. All right, Femi, we're going to end the broadcast.